He lost everything: his job, his home, even his family. But when two of your closest people are betrayed by 1,000 lies, there's only one thing left: vengeance, hidden cameras, deadly evidence, and a solution that will shock even the fates. Are you ready to find out just how black the perfect marriage can get? See more. The betrayal is just beginning.
I caught them together. What I did next will leave you speechless. Chapter 1. Perfect marriage destroyed by one text message. For Mark Turner, a sharply tailored 29-year-old Wall Street financial analyst, life wasn't just good. It was aggressively perfect, a curated tableau from a glossy New York magazine. His marriage to Sarah was the centerpiece of this ideal, a union whispered about in Manhattan circles for its opulent perfection. Their wedding, 3 years prior in the Grand Pierre Hotel, had been the event, a benchmark of uptown sophistication. Sarah, his 27-year-old wife, her Tiffany ring a beacon of flawless love, seemed the living embodiment of his ascent. But beneath this veneer of perfection, in their waterfront townhouse in Hoboken, shadowed by the glittering Manhattan skyline, a nightmare was taking root. And at the heart of this idyllic picture, like a malevolent shade, loomed David, his younger brother, a bond Mark considered sacred, an unbreakable pact of blood. Each morning began with deceitful tenderness, Sarah's warm skin under his touch, hushed promises of a day sculpted from domestic bliss. Then, the ritual of brewing strong coffee, its bitter aroma now a harbinger of dread. A kiss for his wife, increasingly detached, almost perfunctory, and he was off to the office, where his razor-sharp intellect and relentless work ethic had forged his reputation as a titan in the ruthless world of finance. Their life was punctuated by weekly dinners at the chic Bateo, where the Manhattan skyline shimmered in their expensive wine glasses. Empty luxury, meant to mask the rot gnawing at their perfect marriage. Returning each evening to their sleek townhouse, Mark still clung to the illusion of normalcy. Sarah greeted him with a brittle smile, and they'd invite David, staging their familial tableau. Laughter echoed at dinner, childhood memories surfaced. A meticulously crafted performance designed to conceal the truth, a venom seeping into everything. Mark, in his naivete, cherished these moments, basking in a false sense of security, oblivious to the web of deceit tightening around his world. But darkness was gathering. Weeks bled into months, and a sticky unease clung to Mark's heart. Sarah's shifts were subtle, almost imperceptible, yet all the more ominous. Fleeting distraction in her gaze, a hesitation in her voice, a coolness in her touch that even warm embraces couldn't mask. Initially, he rationalized it: stress, fatigue, the normal ebbs and flows. But instinct, that primal self-preservation, screamed of impending disaster. Sarah was spending increasing amounts of time out, often with David yoga classes on 14th Street, urgent repairs on their flawless townhouse, cryptic errands that dissolved into thin air, their hushed whispers behind closed doors, abruptly ended calls, extended absences under flimsy pretexts. Each detail clicked into a sinister mosaic. One day, seized by a chilling premonition, Mark breached Sarah's privacy, plunging into the chaos of her digital life. Amidst meticulously deleted messages and scrubbed calls, he stumbled upon her browser history, and his world tilted on its axis. Subreddit r/infidelity, a sordid den of the betrayed and the betrayers, and in her history, a blood-freezing query: how to hide an affair with a relative. Blood drained from his face. A ringing deafened his ears. This wasn't just suspicion. It was a verdict. Consumed by a desperate thirst for truth, Mark installed a hidden camera in the living room, yielding to the temptation to stare into the abyss, knowing he might unleash Pandora's box. He'd followed instructions gleaned from the internet's shadowed corners, anonymous voices sharing tales of infidelity exposed. Evening descended, thick with dread. Returning home earlier than usual, Mark froze at the threshold, propelled by a terrible premonition. Stepping into the living room, he saw them, Sarah and David, entwined, fused in an unnatural embrace. On the sofa, the very one where they'd hosted countless family nights. To the saccharine strains of their song, Ed Sheeran's falsely tender Perfect, a soundtrack to their mangled love, mocking him from the speakers. Time warped, stretched into infinity as Mark's mind balked at the gruesome revelation. The coffee cup, symbol of his crumbling world, slipped from numb fingers, shattering on the parquet with a gunshot crack. Cries of horror choked in his throat. Sarah and David recoiled, as if burned, their faces, badges of shame and guilt. In the dim light, bare flesh flashed, the air thick with lust and betrayal. Sarah, trembling violently, clutched her gaping robe, desperately trying to conceal not just bare shoulders, but her deceitful soul. Her eyes, frightened, pleading for mercy, yet fundamentally irrevocably false. David, stumbling back towards the window where Manhattan skyscrapers glittered coldly, sought escape. His smug confidence evaporated, leaving only a pathetic imitation of a brother, mired in depravity. Mark watched it all in slow motion, each detail searing itself onto his memory. The camera, emotionless and stark, captured every second of this vile tableau. "Mark, it's not what you think," Sarah stammered, her voice cracking, a counterfeit note of remorse ringing hollow. David, ever the smooth-talking manipulator, lunged to her defense. "Bro, trust me, it's not as simple as it looks." But Mark was deaf to their pathetic excuses. The world he knew had ceased to exist. Marriage, family, brotherly loyalty, all collapsed, dissolving into the ashes of betrayal. He couldn't bear to look at them. Breathing the same air felt repulsive. Wordlessly, he spun on his heel, fleeing the apartment as if escaping plague. Chaos churned within. Humiliation, rage, paralyzing grief. Despair crashed over him, an overwhelming wave threatening to drown him whole. Bursting onto the street where the bittersweet scent of roasted chestnuts mingled with the acrid taste of betrayal, Mark wandered through Hoboken's night, blinded by pain. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles bone white. He had to run, vanish into the crowd, lest he shatter completely from the consuming despair. His closest kin, part of his very essence, had become executioners, striking a fatal blow to his heart. He was alone in the scorched remains of his life. Lost in a fog of desolation, Mark found himself before a bar, its neon sign a mocking flicker in the night. Without hesitation, he plunged inside, seeking oblivion at the bottom of a glass. Alcohol offered no solace, merely blurred the edges of reality, failing to erase the vile tableau of Sarah and David entwined. The betrayal by his wife and brother, a double-edged sword that had ripped his soul apart. Returning through the night towards the hated apartment, past the cold Franklin statue on the waterfront, Mark strayed into the digital refuge of the Forsaken. Reddit. Fingers typed out words of raw despair. "To fool by trusting my wife and brother. Tonight, I start my perfect marriage revenge." And in response, from the digital void, poured a torrent of sympathy and sinister advice. The first comment, a twisted stroke of fate, pointed a path. Judge Smith in Newark, infidelity cases specialist. Look him up if you want blood. His steps grew heavy, his heart leaden. There was no turning back. Ahead lay emptiness, uncertainty. But in that moment, resolve hardened. Divorce inevitable. His world had crumbled, but in the wreckage, a thirst for vengeance ignited. The days that followed blurred into a fever dream. Lawyers, paperwork, courtrooms, an endless carousel of humiliation and agony. Mark was losing everything: job, home, the status symbol car. Divorce mutated into a catastrophe, threatening to bury his former life beneath its ruins. Depression descended like a shroud, poisoning each breath, stealing his will to live. Yet, even this wasn't enough. His family, once his anchor and solace, turned on Mark. They chose the side of the betrayers, blind to his suffering, deaf to the truth. Family pressure amplified his solitude, leaving him utterly forsaken, betrayed by all. In the darkest hours, thoughts of self-destruction became invasive. The pain of loss was unbearable, but deep within, a flicker of defiance persisted. Mark refused to become a victim, refused to let betrayal define his destiny. Slowly, gathering the shards of his will, he began to act. Meticulously, he collected evidence of his wife's infidelity, seeking cynical guidance from online communities, drawing strength from anonymous advice and the hollow comfort of strangers. His aim became more than just divorce, to expose the lie, reclaim his name, avenge his shattered life. Yes, he'd lost almost everything, but he wouldn't surrender the last vestiges of his dignity, or the hope for retribution. The legal war escalated. Mark's gaze turned cold, focused. The hunger for justice, for revenge, became his new guiding star. The path to vengeance promised to be long and agonizing, but Mark was ready to walk it to the bitter end. He was no longer a victim. He was a warrior, rising from the ashes of betrayal. And amidst the pain and hate, in the very heart of darkness, a fragile sprout of hope began to push through. Hope for rebirth. That after night, dawn inevitably breaks. Mark would rise. From shattered illusions, he would forge a new life. Harder.
I drift in your shadow, your breath keeps me still. The night wraps around us, bends time to my will. In dreams we are endless, no space in between. A place made of whispers where silence can sing. Take me to sleep where the stars never end. Lost in the rhythm, we don't have to pretend. Floating in waves where the night will defend. Take me to sleep where the stars never end. Hands, 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 hands. Every beat pulls me deeper inside. Your touch is a current, a velvet tide. Oh, wake me now, let this feeling abide. In your arms, I'm forever.